It is December 1937. In a modest house in Boston's North End, a 2-year-old boy named Leo is sitting on the kitchen floor while his mother scrubs potatoes in the sink. His father has been out of work for 11 months. The radiators are cold. Leo is stacking tin measuring cups, one inside the other, entirely absorbed in the soft sea of metal on metal. His mother turns from the sink, dries her hands on her apron, and lowers herself onto the floor beside him. She does not try to teach him anything. She does not correct his stacking technique. She simply sits with him and watches. After a long silence, Leo holds up a single measuring cup and says, "Mummy, this one is the baby." His mother takes it from his small hand, turns it over in her palm, and says, "It is." His mother smiles. The radiators are still cold. The rent is still overdue, but something is happening in Leo's brain, something that will still be measurable 80 years later. 3 miles away, in a Harvard dormitory room overlooking the Charles River, a 19-year-old sophomore named William is packing a suitcase for Christmas break. His father is a partner at a Boston law firm. His mother serves on the board of the symphony. William's grades are excellent. His future is, by any objective measure, luminous. But William is not looking forward to going home. He has not spoken more than 10 words to his father in 2 years, not out of conflict, but out of absence. His father has never once asked him what he thinks about anything. When William tries to describe this feeling to his roommate, he cannot find the words. So he packs his suitcase in silence and catches the train to a house full of people who do not know him. These 2 boys, Leo from the North End and William from Harvard, did not know each other. They never met, but they shared something extraordinary. Both of them, along with 722 other boys and young men, were enrolled in the longest study of human development ever conducted. And what that study revealed about which of them would end up happy, truly, deeply, lastingly happy, overturned everything the researchers thought they knew. Here's what the study found. The Harvard study of adult development began in 1938. That is not a typo. 1938, the same year as the Munich Agreement, the same year as the first Superman comic, the same year Nescafé invented instant coffee. The study is still running. It has outlived 3 of its 4 directors. It has outlived the Cold War, the moon landing, and the invention of the internet. It has followed its participants from childhood into old age, and, in many cases, into death. The original cohort consisted of 268 Harvard sophomores. They were selected because they were judged to be the finest young men in America. Healthy, intelligent, from good families, bound for success. The researchers measured everything they could think of: physical health, psychological profiles, family backgrounds, IQ scores, handwriting, samples, the distance between their eyes. They conducted exhaustive physical examinations every 5 years and psychological interviews every 2 years. They collected school reports and teacher evaluations. They interviewed the men's parents, their wives, their children. They drew blood, scanned brains, and recorded conversations at the dinner table. Here is the critical part. For the first 3 decades, the study produced almost nothing of value. The researchers published papers about body type and longevity. They correlated earwax consistency with something or other. They measured the angle of each man's earlobe and tried to predict heart disease from it. These were well-intentioned, rigorously conducted, and almost entirely useless. The study was, by its own current director's admission, a failure for most of its first 40 years. Then something changed. The study kept going. Men who were 19 inches 1,938 turned 40, then 60, then 80. They married. They divorced. They had children. Some of them became alcoholics. Some of them became CEOs. One of them became the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy was in the original Harvard cohort, though his data remained sealed. And as the participants aged, the researchers finally began asking a different set of questions. Not, what predicts career success? Not, what predicts cholesterol levels? Not, what predicts longevity as a pure biological phenomenon? But, what predicts happiness? Not momentary pleasure. Not the fleeting satisfaction of a promotion or a new car, but the deep, durable, bone-level contentment that makes a person look back at their life at age 80 and feel, genuinely, honestly, that it was a good life, a life worth living, a life that mattered. When the researchers analyzed the data, the answers stopped them cold. It was not money. Men who earned the highest incomes were no happier, on average, than men who earned modestly. It was not professional achievement. Men who rose to the tops of their fields, partners at major law firms, chairs of hospital departments, published authors, reported the same levels of life satisfaction as men who worked ordinary jobs and retired quietly. It was not IQ. The men with the highest intelligence test scores at 19 were no likelier to be happy at 80 than the men with average scores. In fact, several of the highest IQ men in the study reported some of the lowest levels of life satisfaction. It was not even physical health in early adulthood. Men who were in peak physical condition at 30 were not reliably happier at 80 than men who had struggled with their health in midlife. Here is what the research says. The single variable that predicted happiness in old age, more powerfully than any other factor measured over 8 decades, was the warmth of a person's relationships. Not the number of relationships, not the status of the people in those relationships, not the appearance of connection for social media or holiday cards or family newsletters. The warmth, the genuine, felt, subjective experience of being known, accepted, and loved by at least a few other human beings. Robert Waldinger, the current director of the study and a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, summarized the finding in 4 words. During his TED Talk, a talk that has now been viewed more than 45 million times, good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Period. That is it. 8 decades. Hundreds of thousands of pages of data. Generations of researchers dedicating their entire careers. And the answer comes down to relationships. But here is the part that matters most for anyone raising children. And this part of the study is discussed far less often. The capacity for warm relationships at age 80 was not randomly distributed. It was not luck. It was not genetics, or at least not primarily genetics. It was, in large part, a product of childhood. The men who reported warm relationships with their mothers in childhood were 91% more likely to have warm relationships with their partners. In late life, the men who reported warm relationships with their fathers were 82% more likely to report high life satisfaction at 75. And here is the most striking finding of all. The quality of a man's relationship with his mother in childhood was a stronger predictor of his physical health at age 80 than his cholesterol levels at age 50. Let me say that again. The warmth his mother showed him when he was a child predicted how healthy his body would be at 80 better than a blood test taken in middle age. This is not poetry. This is not a metaphor. This is data from the longest-running study of human development in history. What is happening here? How does the warmth of a mother's presence in 1938 show up in a man's arteries and immune system in 2018? The answer sits in the nervous system. When a parent consistently responds to a child's distress with warmth, with a calm voice, a soft touch, a regulated nervous system, something physiological happens in the child's brain. The child's stress response deactivates. Cortisol drops. The parasympathetic nervous system, the calming branch of the autonomic nervous system, engages. And over hundreds of repetitions across thousands of days, the child's brain learns a fundamental truth at the level of neural architecture. Connection is safe. Other people are a source of comfort, not threat. When I am distressed, I can reach out, and someone will reach back. Children who do not learn this, children whose distress is met with indifference or anger or unpredictable responses, develop a different neural architecture. Their stress response systems remain primed, vigilant, calibrated for a world in which comfort is uncertain and relationships cannot be trusted. They survive. They grow up. They may achieve extraordinary things. But at 80, when they look back at their lives, something is missing. Not because they were not successful, not because they were not wealthy, not because they did not work hard, but because they never learned, in the deepest part of their brain, that connection is safe. This is the critical part. This is what the Harvard Grant study actually teaches us about parenting. You are not raising a child who will take exams and get into universities and build careers, although they will do all of those things. You are raising an 80-year-old. You are raising someone who will, 6 or 7 decades from now, look back at their entire life and ask the question that every human being eventually asks, Was it good? Did it matter? Was I loved? And the answer to that question is being written right now, in the kitchen, on the sofa, at the edge of the bed at night, in the thousands of tiny interactions between you and your child that feel so ordinary you barely notice them happening. This is not permissive parenting. The Harvard study is not saying that structure, expectations, and boundaries do not matter. They do. What the study is saying is that the emotional temperature of the relationship matters more, and that a child who is held to high standards inside a warm relationship will thrive, that a child who is held to high standards inside a cold relationship will achieve, and then, at 50, wonder why they feel empty, that the container matters more than the contents, that the bond is bigger than the expectations, the rules, the achievements, the grades. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. The finding that warmth of relationship with your mother in childhood predicts your physical health at 80 better than your cholesterol levels at 50. That is one of the most counterintuitive findings in the entire study. Most of us were raised to believe that success and achievement are what make a life good. That if you work hard enough, perform well enough, and earn enough, happiness will follow. The Harvard data simply does not support that. So I want to ask you, what were you raised to believe about what makes a happy life? And does the Harvard finding change anything about how you think about raising your own children? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one in the first 24 hours. So, what does this actually mean for the parent standing in the kitchen at 6:15 on a Tuesday evening, trying to get dinner on the table while a 5-year-old melts down about the color of their cup? It means that the meltdown is not an interruption to your real parenting work. The meltdown is your parenting work. It is an opportunity to do the thing that the Harvard study says matters most, to connect, in a moment of distress, with warmth. This does not mean you have to be perfect. The Harvard researchers found that what mattered was not perfect parenting. No parent in the study provided that, because no parent ever has. What mattered was consistent warmth over time. The men who were happiest at 80 did not have mothers who never lost their temper, or fathers who never worked too late. They had parents who, most of the time, when it counted, showed up with warmth. And here is a finding that should lift weight off every parent reading this. The researchers identified something they called rupture and repair. Every parent ruptures. Every parent snaps, or dismisses, or misses the moment. What distinguished the parents who raised the happiest adults was not an absence of rupture. It was the presence of repair, coming back after the rupture, saying, "I got frustrated. That was not your fault. I am here." Re-establishing the connection. The repair is not a footnote to the parenting story. The repair is the story. Because repair teaches the child something that perfect smoothness never could, that relationships survive difficulty, that connection can be broken and restored, that love is not fragile, that people come back. This should change how you think about your worst parenting moments. The moment you lose your temper is not the moment that determines your child's future. It is the moment after, when you kneel down, meet their eyes, and say, "I should not have shouted. I was tired, and I took it out on you, and I am sorry. Let us try that again." That is the moment the Harvard study is actually measuring, not perfection, repair. This also means something specific about how you spend time with your child. The researchers found that the quantity of time mattered, not just the quality, not just the big moments, the small, ordinary, apparently trivial interactions. The conversation in the car on the way to school, the 10 minutes lying beside them at bedtime, the Saturday morning pancakes. These accumulated across the years into something the researchers could measure. Men who had parents who spent consistent, unhurried, present time with them, not doing anything special, just being with them, were far more likely to become adults who felt, at 80, that their lives had been good. This is not a call to quit your job and spend every waking hour with your children. The study does not support that either. What it supports is presence, attention, the quality of being genuinely there, not scrolling, not planning, not thinking about work, but there, with them, in the moment, for some period. Some of time every day, even if that period is short, even if it is just 10 minutes. But the nervous system does not measure time in minutes. It measures the quality of connection. 10 fully present minutes are neurologically more powerful than 2 hours of distracted proximity. There is one more finding from the Harvard study that deserves mention, not because it is comfortable, but because it is true. The researchers also looked at the men in the study who were not happy at 80. Men who looked back at their lives and felt regret, or emptiness, or a sense that something fundamental had been missing. And they asked a simple question: what did these men have in common? The answer was not poverty. It was not career failure. It was not divorce, although many of them had been divorced. The answer was isolation. The least happy men in the study were the ones who, at 80, could not name a single person they felt genuinely close to. Not a partner, not a chach, U0069LD, not a friend, not a neighbor, no one. And when the researchers traced these men's lives backwards through the decades, they found a pattern. These men had not suddenly become isolated in old age. The roots of their isolation stretched all the way back to childhood. They were the children whose distress had been met with indifference. The children whose parents had been physically present but emotionally absent. The children who had learned, before they could form sentences, that reaching out did not reliably bring comfort, and who had therefore stopped reaching out. This is hard to read. It should be, but it also contains, in its hardness, a clarity that is actually helpful. Because the thing that prevents this outcome is not complicated. It is not expensive. It does not require a degree in child psychology, or a carefully curated enrichment schedule, or a parenting philosophy with a branded name. It requires this: that when your child reaches for you, you reach back. That when they are distressed, you offer comfort. Not solutions, not lectures, not consequences, but comfort first, presence first, connection first. That you do this not once, not perfectly, but repeatedly, over years, until the pattern is so deeply etched into their nervous system that they cannot imagine a world in which they are unworthy of love. That is what the Harvard grant study is actually about. Not Harvard, not grants, not the 84 families or the 80 years or the thousands of pages of data. It is about the moment, right now, in the room where you are reading these words, between a parent and a child. That moment is more powerful than you think. The study proves it. Let me return for a moment to Leo and William, the two boys I described at the beginning. Leo, the boy from the North End stacking measuring cups on a cold kitchen floor, did not go to university. He worked as a machinist for 44 years. He married a woman named Eleanor, and they had 3 children. When the researchers visited him at age 78, he was sitting on a porch in a modest house in Quincy, Massachusetts. His grandchildren were running in the garden. His wife brought him tea without being asked. He told the interviewer, "I have had a fortunate life. I really have." The interviewer asked him what he meant by fortunate. Leo thought about it for a long time. Then he said, "I have always known that the people who matter to me matter back." William, the Harvard sophomore who packed his suitcase in silence and caught the train to a house full of people who did not know him, graduated with honors. He went to law school and became a partner at a firm in New York. He married twice. Both marriages ended in divorce. Like his children, he has 2, live in different states and call on Christmas. When the researchers visited him at age 80, he was living alone in a well-appointed apartment on the Upper East Side. He said to the interviewer, "I do not know what I did wrong. I did everything I was supposed to do." The interviewer did not answer him. There was nothing the interviewer could say. 2 boys, 2 lives. The difference between them was not money, not status, not intelligence, not the elegance of their early education. The difference was connection. The difference was the feeling, planted in childhood, cultivated across a lifetime, that there are people in the world who know you, see you, love you, and will not leave. That feeling is not a soft, sentimental irrelevance. It is, according to the longest study of human lives ever conducted, the single most reliable foundation for a good life. Your child is building that foundation right now. You are the architect. Which of these findings challenges the way you were raised the most? That relationship warmth predicts physical health at 80 better than cholesterol levels at 50? Then that the quality of your connection with your child, not the quality of their academic performance, is the strongest predictor of their future. Happiness? That the repair after rupture matters more than the absence of rupture itself? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one in the first 24 hours. If you want to understand why some children develop the capacity for deep connection while others struggle, and what Scandinavian parents do differently to build this capacity, that video is right here. Subscribe and turn on notifications for new videos every week. decoding the parenting science that most parents never hear about.